In a world constructed from steel, sweat, and dreams, there exists a name that rises above the dust, the noise, and the relentless march of time: Caterpillar. We're not talking about simple machines, we're talking about iron titans that have raised impossible bridges, carved paths through deserts, and shaped entire cities. For more than a century, this industrial colossus has not only dominated the earth, but has sculpted an indelible legacy in the history of modern civilization. Present in nearly every country on the planet, 192 out of 195, Caterpillar isn't just a brand, it's an empire, a giant that controls almost 40% of the global heavy machinery market. But the big question is, how did it get here? What products made it invincible? And what secrets does this legend of steel hold that has marked the course of civilization itself? This is the untold story of Caterpillar. And if you enjoy stories that show how empires are built from nothing, subscribe. Every week we share the origin of those who changed the course of humanity. Let's go back more than a century and a half to 1849. In the small town of Concord, in the state of New Hampshire, a man destined to forever change the history of machinery was born. Benjamin Holt grew up surrounded by a large family, no fewer than 11 siblings, under the roof of a home where hard work wasn't an option but a way of life. His father owned a local sawmill, and from the moment he could lift a log, the Holts learned the value of physical effort. The crack of cut wood, the dust suspended in the air, the metallic echo of saws. That place was Benjamin's first school. There, among beams and tools, he understood what it meant to transform the force of nature into human progress. The family enjoyed a certain economic comfort thanks to the business, but Ben's destiny would soon change. Over time, he took command of the sawmill while his brothers handled sales and deliveries in California. Everything seemed to be moving along, steadily, until an unexpected blow altered his life. At 34 years old, he lost his parents. That tragedy led him to hand over control of the business and make a decision that would mark the course of his future. In 1883, with determination, he set out for California. There he would begin not just a new life, but a new era for the world. He didn't go alone. The Holts were a united family accustomed to facing adversity together. There they founded the Stockton Wheel Company, a business dedicated to wood processing in the arid valleys of the West. It was then that Benjamin earned a nickname that would accompany him for the rest of his life: Uncle Ben. Everyone in Stockton called him that, not only because of his affable character, but because he was always surrounded by young workers who saw in him a teacher and a visionary. In his small workshop, Benjamin lived to invent. He wasn't a man of detailed blueprints. His machines were born first in his mind and then in his hands. Only sometimes to guide his men would he sketch quick drawings on paper. That distinctive style became his trademark and the spark that would ignite the birth of an empire. The Stockton wheel business prospered rapidly. Within a few years, what had started as a modest workshop became a respected company throughout the region, with more than 25 employees and 2 factories filled with machinery that, for those years, seemed pulled from the future. The Holts proved that their surname was synonymous with hard work, innovation, and quality. But Benjamin wasn't a man who settled for easy success. Inside him burned a different ambition, a voice telling him that wood was just the beginning, that his true legacy would be made of steel and steam. And so, with his mind always one step ahead of the present, he decided to face a gigantic challenge: replacing the ancestral force of horses with the power of a machine. In 1892, the Holt Manufacturing Company was born. Its first iron child was a Colossus, a steam tractor more than 7 meters long and weighing nearly 22,000 kilograms. It was imposing, a metallic monster that seemed to come from another era. Farmers looked at it in awe, conscious that before them stood the future of agriculture. However, that giant had a problem. It was so heavy that the earth rejected it. It only had to advance a few meters before sinking under its own weight. Far from giving up, Benjamin understood that he faced a great decision: either reinvent the machine or his dream would die buried along with those enormous wheels. And it was then, in 1904, when Holt's creativity reached its peak. He changed the wheels for a continuous track system, a revolutionary invention that forever transformed the way the earth was worked. The result was the first tracked tractor in history. What was born that year wasn't simply a machine, it was a creature of steel that crawled over the terrain with the strength of 100 horses, dominating where before there had only been mud and defeat. And the name that would immortalize it came unexpectedly. Charles Clements, the company's photographer, was watching how that machine advanced slowly when, surprised by the movement of the tracks, he exclaimed, "It crawls like a caterpillar." Benjamin was fascinated by the metaphor. That simple observation gave name to an eternal symbol: caterpillar. The first Caterpillar tractor sold for $5,500, which today would be equivalent to about $185,000, an enormous figure for the time. However, it became the most profitable option a farmer could dream of. That steel giant was expensive, yes, but it saved years of work, replaced the strength of dozens of animals, and multiplied efficiency in the field. It was an immediate success. Whoever invested in a Caterpillar wasn't just buying a machine, they were buying the future. But the success didn't come without challenges. In those early years, convincing farmers to abandon their traditional methods and embrace this mechanical beast required more than just demonstrations. It required trust. And Benjamin Holt knew that trust was built one field at a time, one harvest at a time. He personally traveled to farms across California, watching his machines work under the scorching sun, making adjustments, listening to complaints, and perfecting every detail. This hands-on approach created a bond between the company and its customers that would last for generations. The agricultural revolution that Caterpillar sparked was profound. Farms that had once required dozens of workers and countless horses could now operate with a fraction of the manpower. Fields that had been too difficult to cultivate became productive. The American West, with its vast expanses and challenging terrain, was being transformed by these mechanical marvels, and word spread fast. From the wheat fields of Kansas to the cotton plantations of the South, Caterpillar was becoming a household name. That future accelerated with the arrival of World War I. Between 1914 and 1918, while the world sank into trenches and mud, Holt's tractors proved to be something more than simple agricultural tools. Their tracks advanced where nothing else could, and soon the Army adopted them on the battlefront. They didn't just transport supplies and artillery. Their design inspired the creation of the first military tanks. The British military, struggling with the impossible conditions of the Western Front, where traditional vehicles became hopelessly mired in the churned mud of no man's land, looked to Holt's track system as the solution. The Caterpillar track could distribute weight over a larger surface area, allowing movement over terrain that would stop any wheeled vehicle. This principle became the foundation for the development of the first combat tanks, armored vehicles that would change warfare forever. Holt didn't know it, but on those European fields, not only was a war being fought, the concept of modern war, machinery was also being born. His tractors hauled heavy artillery pieces across battlefields, transported wounded soldiers from the front lines, and helped construct defensive positions. The machines worked around the clock, enduring conditions that would have killed horses and exhausted men. They became as essential to the war effort as rifles and ammunition. However, when the roar of the cannons faded in 1918, problems also began. The war had ended, and with it the large military orders. Farmers looked more carefully at which machine was most practical for their daily work, and it was then that a fierce competitor appeared, the CL Best Gas Traction Company. Daniel Best had been a pioneer in his own right, developing steam-powered harvesters in the late 1800s. His company, later led by his son Clarence Leo Best, had taken a different approach than Holt. While Holt had focused on steam power and military applications, Best had been perfecting gasoline-powered tractors that were more suitable for everyday farm work. Their tractors were lighter, easier to handle, and better adapted to agricultural work. While Holt had focused on the war, Best had conquered the fields. The competition between the two companies was fierce and sometimes personal. Both were based in California, both served similar markets, and both claimed to have invented key innovations in tracked vehicle technology. Patent disputes arose. Customers were torn between the two brands. Dealers competed aggressively for territory. It was a battle that threatened to weaken both companies, even as the market for their products was growing. The hardest blow came in 1920. That year, Benjamin Holt died, the man who had defied nature and given life to Caterpillar. He passed away at the age of 71, leaving behind a company that bore his innovative spirit but faced an uncertain future. With his death, it seemed the company was crumbling. The Holt Manufacturing Company was weakened, losing ground to CL. Best, and many thought the dream would end there. But the story wasn't over yet. The leadership vacuum left by Benjamin Holt's death created internal struggles within the company. Different factions had different visions for the future. Some wanted to double down on agricultural equipment. Others saw construction as the future. And still others believed military contracts were the key to survival. The company drifted, losing focus and market share. Sales declined. Morale suffered. Investors grew nervous. The golden years seemed to be ending. In 1921, a new wind of opportunity blew from Washington. The government approved the Federal Highway Act, which allocated $1 billion to infrastructure construction. It was a titanic plan to build thousands of kilometers of roads across the country. The United States was entering the automobile age, and the existing roads were inadequate for the millions of cars that were beginning to fill American driveways. The new CEO of Holt, Thomas A. Baxter, understood that this was the path to follow. He ordered abandoning the idea of giant, impractical tractors and redirected the company toward a market with a future: construction machinery. The fields were no longer enough. The horizon now was roads, bridges, and cities. Baxter was a businessman, not an inventor like Holt, but he had vision. He saw that America was about to embark on the largest construction project in its history, and Caterpillar machines could be at the center of it. Meanwhile, C.L. Best was facing his own challenges. The agricultural market was becoming saturated. Competition from other manufacturers, including Ford, which had entered the tractor market with mass-produced, affordable models, was intensifying. Both Holt and Best were spending enormous sums on competing technologies, duplicate dealer networks, and legal battles over patents. It was becoming clear to observers that this competition was wasteful and potentially destructive to both companies. Finally, in 1925, the unthinkable happened. The two rivals who had spent years competing decided to join forces. The Holt Manufacturing Company and the C.L. Best Gas Traction Company merged, giving rise to a new era. Thus was officially born the Caterpillar Tractor Company, the titan that would in time dominate the entire world. The merger was a complex negotiation. C.L. Best became the chairman of the new company, while key executives from both organizations had to learn to work together. They combined the best technologies from both companies: Holt's superior track systems and Best's more efficient gasoline engines. They consolidated manufacturing facilities, merged dealer networks, and combined research and development efforts. Most importantly, they stopped fighting each other and turned their combined strength toward conquering the market. That same year, after the merger that gave life to Caterpillar, its first logo was also born. Simple, loaded with identity. All the Machines began to be painted in a war gray, a color that evoked discipline, strength, and the seriousness of the era. It was the image of a young company, but ready to face any challenge. The logo featured the word Caterpillar in bold industrial lettering that suggested both power and reliability. It was a mark that customers could trust, a symbol that meant quality and durability. With CL Best at the helm, Caterpillar didn't take long to expand unstoppably. His vision and leadership made the company stop being just a tractor manufacturer to become a symbol of innovation. Best understood that success required more than just good products. It required a network of dealers who could provide service and parts, a reputation for standing behind their machines, and continuous innovation to stay ahead of competitors. And it was in 1931 when Caterpillar took 3 gigantic steps that would forever mark its history. That year, it manufactured its first motor grader, the Auto Patrol, the first machine designed specifically to level roads and highways, not as an improvised accessory, but as a complete vehicle. It was an advance that would change the way infrastructure was built around the world. Before the Auto Patrol, road grading was done with blade attachments pulled behind tractors or with teams of horses pulling primitive scrapers. The process was slow, imprecise, and labor-intensive. The Auto Patrol changed everything. It was a purpose-built machine with a blade that could be precisely adjusted for angle and depth, wheels positioned for optimal control, and an operator station that provided clear visibility of the work. Road construction crews could now grade roads faster, more accurately, and with fewer workers. It was a revolution in road building. In parallel, it presented its first diesel engine, known as the legendary Old Betsy. It wasn't just any engine. It consumed less, offered more power, and opened a universe of possibilities, from power generation to driving new machines. It was the heart of a future in which diesel would become the industry standard. Diesel engines had been around since the late 1800s, invented by Rudolf Diesel, but they had been large, heavy, and primarily used in stationary applications like power generation or ship propulsion. Caterpillar's achievement was creating a diesel engine that was reliable and compact enough for use in mobile equipment. Old Betsy, installed in a Caterpillar 60 tractor, proved that diesel could replace gasoline in construction and agricultural equipment. The advantages were significant. Diesel fuel was cheaper than gasoline. Diesel engines were more fuel efficient, getting more work done per gallon. They produced more torque at lower speeds, which was ideal for heavy work. And they were more durable, lasting longer between overhauls. Once customers saw the benefits, there was no going back. Within a few years, Caterpillar would convert its entire product line to diesel, and the industry would follow. But perhaps the most iconic decision of 1931 was another: the color change of all its machines. The gray was left behind and replaced by Caterpillar yellow, a vibrant tone visible from kilometers away, a symbol of power and dominance. From that moment on, that yellow wouldn't just be a color. It would be a declaration of identity, an emblem that transformed the way the world recognized Caterpillar. The choice of yellow was strategic. On construction sites, visibility was safety. A bright yellow machine could be seen easily, preventing accidents. But it was also about brand recognition. Once that particular shade of yellow became associated with Caterpillar, any construction site with yellow machines was immediately identified as using Cat equipment. It became a form of advertising that worked every single day. Competitors could copy the technology, but they couldn't copy that distinctive yellow without inviting lawsuits. It was brilliant marketing. However, the era wasn't easy. The Great Depression was hitting the United States hard, and Caterpillar, like all companies, suffered a brutal drop in sales. There were moments when it seemed the company wouldn't survive, but the determination of its leaders and confidence in its machines kept it standing against all odds. Soon, That resistance transformed into greatness. The Great Depression, which began with the stock market crash of 1929 and lasted through most of the 1930s, was the worst economic disaster in American history. Unemployment reached 25%, banks failed, businesses closed, construction projects were canceled. Farmers, already struggling with low crop prices, couldn't afford new equipment. Caterpillar's sales plummeted. The company was forced to lay off workers, cut wages, and reduce production. There were months when the factories ran at a fraction of their capacity. But Caterpillar survived where others failed. Part of the reason was the quality and durability of their machines. Even when customers couldn't buy new equipment, they kept their old Caterpillar machines running, buying parts and service from Cat dealers. This aftermarket business helped keep the company afloat. Additionally, some government infrastructure projects continued, particularly after President Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal programs began funding public works projects to create jobs. Caterpillar positioned itself to supply these projects. In the 1930s, Caterpillar's tractors and motor graders played a crucial role in one of the most iconic constructions of the century, the Golden Gate Bridge in California. That bridge, which today is a world symbol, was raised with the tireless help of Caterpillar's yellow machines. The Golden Gate Bridge, spanning the entrance to San Francisco Bay, was one of the most ambitious engineering projects of its time. The bridge would stretch nearly 3 kilometers with towers rising 227 meters above the water. Building it required moving massive amounts of earth, concrete, and steel. Caterpillar tractors excavated the sites for the towers and anchorages. They hauled materials across difficult terrain. They worked in conditions that tested both the machines and their operators: steep grades, unstable ground, and the constant wind that swept through the Golden Gate. But the machines performed flawlessly, helping to complete the bridge in 1937, a triumph of American engineering that stood as a symbol of progress during dark economic times. And when World War II arrived, Caterpillar was again called to the front. It was no longer about cultivated fields or bridges, but trenches, military roads, and battlefronts. Its machines built fortifications, repaired roads destroyed by bombs, cleared battlefields, and became indispensable allies of the Army. World War II was a global conflict on a scale never before seen. It required massive logistical efforts to move armies, build bases, construct airfields, and maintain supply lines across multiple continents. Caterpillar machines were essential to this effort. In North Africa, Cat tractors moved across the desert sands, building roads and airstrips for Allied forces. In the Pacific, they cleared jungles, built bases on remote islands, and created the infrastructure needed to support the island-hopping campaign against Japan. In Europe, they repaired roads and bridges destroyed by retreating German forces, keeping Allied armies moving forward. The U.S. Navy's Seabees, the construction battalions that built bases around the world, relied heavily on Caterpillar equipment. The machines had to work in extreme conditions: tropical heat, Arctic cold, swamps, mountains, and they had to be reliable because failure could mean the difference between success and defeat in military operations. Caterpillar rose to the challenge. The company converted its factories to wartime production, working around the clock to meet military demand. Employees who had been laid off during the Depression were rehired. Women joined the workforce in large numbers, operating machinery and assembling equipment. It was an all-out effort that not only helped win the war, but also positioned Caterpillar for post-war success. After the war ended, the company didn't stop. Caterpillar extended its operations around the world. It reached Australia, England, India, and was present in major projects like the Bakra Dam in 1948, one of the largest of its time, or the American highways that marked the birth of the planet's extensive road network. The post-war period was a time of reconstruction and expansion. War-torn Europe and Asia needed to rebuild. The United States entered a period of prosperity and growth, with massive suburban development and the construction of the interstate highway system. Developing nations sought to modernize their infrastructure. All of this created enormous demand for construction equipment, and Caterpillar was positioned to meet it. The company established manufacturing facilities and dealer networks around the globe. In England, Caterpillar opened a plant to serve European markets. In Australia, the company built machines designed for the unique demands of mining and agriculture in the outback. In India, Caterpillar equipment helped build dams, roads, and irrigation systems that were essential to the country's development. The company was no longer just American, it was becoming truly global. In the 50s, Caterpillar's prestige was evident. Its reliability was so recognized that it was summoned for work in the most extreme places on the planet. Its boldest feat of the decade occurred in the frozen confines of Antarctica as part of Operation Deep Freeze. Operation Deep Freeze was a U.S. military operation to establish research stations in Antarctica. The continent is the most hostile environment on Earth. Temperatures can drop below negative 80 degrees Celsius, winds can exceed 300 kilometers per hour, and the ice is thousands of meters thick. Building permanent bases there required equipment that could function in conditions that would destroy ordinary machines. Caterpillar developed special tractors for the Antarctic missions. The machines were modified to handle extreme cold, special metals that wouldn't become brittle, lubricants that wouldn't freeze, heating systems to keep engines warm. The tractors hauled supplies from ships to inland bases, often traveling hundreds of kilometers across ice sheets. They worked in 24-hour darkness during the Antarctic winter. They proved that Caterpillar machines could operate literally anywhere on Earth, a demonstration of capability that enhanced the company's reputation for reliability. In the 60s, the company reinforced its global identity. It acquired new factories, expanded its production, and renewed its image with a new logo that incorporated the iconic Caterpillar C. It was a decade of consolidation and expansion, in which not only its machinery line grew, but also its international influence. The 1960s saw Caterpillar continue its international expansion, but it was also a period of increasing competition. Japanese manufacturers like Komatsu were beginning to enter the global market with lower-priced equipment. European companies like Liebherr and Volvo were also competing. Caterpillar responded by emphasizing quality, reliability, and service. The company invested heavily in its dealer network, ensuring that customers anywhere in the world could get parts and service for their CAT machines. This became a key competitive advantage. Customers knew that buying Caterpillar meant buying support that would last the life of the machine. The 70s and 80s marked absolute reign. In 1973, Caterpillar modernized its entire fleet, adapting to the needs of a world that demanded more power and greater efficiency. In 1975, it took a visionary step with the creation of the CAT Plus program, which revolutionized the concept of after-sales service and maintenance, ensuring that every machine, no matter how used, could remain operational for decades. The CAT Plus program was revolutionary. Instead of just selling parts, Caterpillar offered complete remanufacturing services. A worn-out engine or transmission could be completely rebuilt to like-new specifications, at a fraction of the cost of buying new. This extended the life of CAT machines almost indefinitely and created customer loyalty. Owners knew that their investment in Caterpillar equipment would pay off for years, even decades. The program also created a steady stream of revenue from parts and service that helped stabilize the company's finances during economic downturns. In 1979, a decision was made that would define its visual identity, changing the color of its machines to the current Caterpillar yellow, even more intense and recognizable than that of 1931. That shade became both a warning and a symbol. Where there was a yellow machine, there was progress. The new yellow was brighter and more vivid, formulated to be visible even in dusty or foggy conditions. It became so distinctive that Caterpillar trademarked the color. Competitors couldn't use it without legal consequences. The yellow became one of the most recognized colors in the world, as immediately identifiable as the golden arches of McDonald's or the red of Coca-Cola. It was brand identity at its finest. Just 2 years later, in 1981, Caterpillar expanded its horizons toward completely new fields, entering the world of industrial and solar turbines, demonstrating that it not only built roads but also energy to move the planet. Caterpillar's entry into the power generation business was a natural extension of its diesel engine expertise. The same engines that powered construction equipment could also drive generators to produce electricity. As power demand grew worldwide, particularly in developing nations and remote areas where electrical grids didn't reach, Caterpillar saw an opportunity. The company began manufacturing complete power systems, generators, switchgear, and control systems that could provide reliable electricity anywhere. These systems powered mines, oil fields, hospitals, hotels, and entire communities. It was a business that would eventually grow to represent a significant portion of Caterpillar's revenue. The biggest change came in 1986, when the company officially adopted the name Caterpillar Inc. It was no longer just a tractor manufacturer. It was a diversified multinational with a catalog that included marine engines, electric generators, transmissions, and heavy machinery reconstruction programs. The name change reflected the reality of what Caterpillar had become. The company made engines for ships and locomotives. It made industrial gas turbines. It provided financing services to customers. It offered insurance. The word tractor in the old name was too limiting. Caterpillar Inc. better captured the scope of the modern company, a global enterprise involved in multiple industries, united by a commitment to quality and innovation. The 90s were turbulent. Caterpillar faced strikes, labor tensions, and internal controversies that tested its leadership. However, far from weakening it, these crises strengthened it. The 1990s began with a major labor dispute. The United Auto Workers Union, which represented many Caterpillar employees, went on strike over wages and working conditions. The strike lasted for years, becoming one of the longest and most bitter labor disputes in American history. Production continued with management employees and replacement workers, but the conflict damaged morale and the company's reputation. Eventually, a settlement was reached, but the experience left scars on both sides. Yet Caterpillar emerged from the turmoil with a more efficient operation. The company had restructured its manufacturing processes, implementing lean production techniques and modernizing facilities. It had diversified its revenue streams, reducing dependence on any single market. And it had strengthened its global presence, ensuring that problems in one region wouldn't cripple the entire company. In 1998, it opened its first cat rental stores, offering an innovative model that allowed renting machinery instead of buying it. A year later, in 1999, it launched parts.cat.com, its online parts portal, getting ahead of the digital era and facilitating access for customers around the world. The rental business was a game changer. Not every customer needed to own equipment. A contractor working on a 3-month project didn't want to buy a machine that would sit idle for the rest of the year. Rental provided flexibility. Customers could get the exact equipment they needed when they needed it without the capital expense and depreciation of ownership. For Caterpillar, the rental business created another revenue stream and introduced customers to CAT equipment who might later become buyers. The online parts system was equally innovative. Before the internet, ordering parts meant calling a dealer, waiting for someone to look up part numbers, and hoping the part was in stock. With parts.cat.com, customers could search the entire Caterpillar catalog, find exactly what they needed, check availability, and order with a few clicks. Saved time and reduced errors, improving the customer experience. With the start of the 2000s, Caterpillar directed its gaze toward an even more ambitious sector: large-scale mining. In this terrain, it established itself as an undisputed leader, capable of supplying the largest and most resistant machines on the planet. Mining was undergoing a transformation. As easily accessible ore deposits were exhausted, mining companies had to dig deeper and move more material to extract the same amount of metal or coal. This required larger, more powerful equipment. Caterpillar developed massive haul trucks capable of carrying hundreds of tons, excavators with buckets large enough to scoop up cars, and drilling systems that could bore through solid rock. These machines were engineering marvels, costing millions of dollars each, but enabling mining operations that wouldn't otherwise be economically viable. Its maximum bet came in 2011 with the purchase of Bucyrus for $8.8 billion, a colossal acquisition that reinforced its position as the indomitable titan of world mining. Bucyrus was a legendary name in mining equipment, known for building some of the largest machinery in the world, including walking drag lines and enormous shovels used in surface mining. By acquiring Bucyrus, Caterpillar didn't just buy a competitor, it bought expertise, technology, and a complete product line that complemented its existing offerings. The acquisition made Caterpillar the dominant supplier to the global mining industry, able to provide everything a mine needed from exploration to reclamation. Today, Caterpillar generates more than $66 billion in annual revenue. It has more than 100 lifestyle stores, and its presence extends to practically every country on the planet. There is no continent or territory where its footprint isn't marked. The lifestyle stores represent yet another dimension of the Caterpillar brand, selling clothing, boots, accessories, and even toys bearing the cat logo. These stores turn the brand into a lifestyle choice. People who have never operated a bulldozer wear Caterpillar work boots. Children play with toy cat excavators. The brand has transcended its industrial origins to become a cultural icon, recognized and respected worldwide. Its machines have raised entire cities, built impossible bridges, contained rivers with colossal dams, shaped stadiums and opened paths in deserts, jungles, and mountains. From the Hoover Dam to the Channel Tunnel connecting England and France, from the highways crisscrossing every continent to the mines extracting the resources that power modern civilization, Caterpillar has been there. The machines have worked in every climate, on every terrain, under every condition imaginable. But Caterpillar isn't just steel and gears. It's also an ally of humanity. It has been in humanitarian missions, has responded on the front lines after natural disasters, and has been collaborating with the Red Cross for more than 90 years. When earthquakes strike, when hurricanes devastate communities, when floods destroy infrastructure, Caterpillar equipment is often among the first to arrive. The machines clear debris, restore access, rebuild roads and bridges. The Caterpillar Foundation provides financial support for disaster relief and community development worldwide. It's a recognition that with great success comes great responsibility, that the company has an obligation to use its resources and capabilities to help those in need. Today, it also works tirelessly on developing more sustainable products, knowing that its mission isn't only to build, but also to protect the planet's future. The company is investing in electric and hybrid technologies, developing machines that produce fewer emissions. It's working on autonomous equipment that can operate more efficiently, reducing fuel consumption. It's exploring alternative fuels and energy sources. The goal is to continue providing the machines that build the world while minimizing environmental impact, ensuring that future generations inherit a planet that's still livable. More than a company, Caterpillar has become an eternal symbol of resistance, innovation, and power. A giant that has not only survived the passage of time, but has molded it to its will. Every bolt, every engine, every machine is a reminder that behind the steel, beats the vision of men who dreamed bigger than anyone. This was the untold story of Caterpillar Inc., the titan that took iron and dreams and turned them into civilization, an empire of steel that, more than building the world, has made it possible. If you enjoyed this story, there are many more waiting. Hit subscribe and join us on this journey through the minds that built the world.